insurance. This is Tony Cañas, Chief Motivational Officer at Insurance Nerds and PNC Client Advisor at the Jacobson Group. I am recording this from my home base of Columbus, Ohio on a Sunday, so it will not go live today. Today I want to talk to you about understanding declining retention in the insurance industry. I don't have the numbers to back it up. I have tried to get retention by age numbers from HR at a previous employer, back when I ran the young professional group at that employer. Then while writing Insurance Tomorrow, I tried to get industry-wide numbers of retention by age, or rather turnover by age. And it doesn't seem like anybody is measuring this. It doesn't seem that anybody is measuring retention within insurance by age category. And if anybody is measuring it, then they're too embarrassed to share the numbers. And very often I have carriers tell me that their retention is really, really good, but their turnover is really, really, really low. And I always ask him, but are you measuring it by age category? Because if you're not, and you only have a few, especially in a small carrier, if you're not measuring it by age, especially in a small carrier, it would be easy to think, oh, my turnover is only 6% a year. And then if you were to dig into it, you would realize that the reason for that is because you are still mostly a baby boomer company, and those baby boomers are more loyal, and they don't have incentives to switch. They're getting paid well, they're grandfathered into pension programs, and your few millennials are turning over and you're not even realizing it because they're such a small percentage of your company, especially in a small company. But you will. Once you realize there's a problem, it'll be too late to fix. So I highly encourage you to start measuring retention and to dig into the numbers for the last several years, retention by age, because I would bet, when I wrote this article in 2017, what I said is I would bet my book and speaking royalties in 2018, which by the way, now I'm at the end of 2019 recording this, those were significant numbers. I made a significant amount of money in 2018 from my book. Anyway, so I would have bet my book and speaking royalties in 2018 that every carrier retention of the under 35 crowd is significantly lower than of the more mature crowd. And I think to this day, this is true. I think your retention of, let's say, your 38-year-old and younger crowd is lower than your more experienced people. And if you're not measuring that, you're not seeing the problem in the younger generation. So why? Why is retention lower among the younger crowd? And it's very simple. It comes down to the incentives that we face and the way we were raised. And the way we were raised, my book is all about the way we were raised. Or you can watch my presentation. It is online. I'll link it on this video. It's an hour long, but it'll really teach you a lot about the way we were raised. But the incentives piece is very interesting. Basically, I'll include the link to this Forbes article about how it's well documented that and this is not an insurance problem, this is a corporate problem, corporate America problem. Employees that stay in the same company for longer than 2 years eventually end up getting paid 50% less than people who have switched companies a whole bunch, okay? So what it comes down to is we are not good at rewarding our loyal people. And that sucks, that is awful, because they're so important to the operation of the company. But I've seen it many times. People who grew up at a company and are still there, especially if they started in a very low level job, right? If you started in the mailroom at 19 years old and you used the company's tuition reimbursement to get your bachelor's and to grow into a better role, and then you use that same tuition reimbursement program to get a master's degree, and now you're in like a manager or director level role, pretty much guarantee at a large carrier that you are in the bottom of the pay band for that particular role. And people are getting hired with less experience than you and better salaries, because it is hard to give you a big raise while you're in the same company. And it's unfair. So anyway, so millennials were raised by boomers who have a distinct parenting philosophy. They want us to have it better than they did. And also, there's good research that the generations that grow up during a time of abundance, grow up slower. We were raised during the 80s and 90s, a time of affluence, and we grew up slower. However, we saw our parents and grandparents who were company men get downsized, lose their pensions, lose their jobs, lose their health care during the transition from stakeholder capitalism to shareholder capitalism. And thus, we saw CEOs of publicly traded companies, and this is not an insurance-specific phenomenon, but we saw CEOs of publicly traded companies downsize thousands to hit quarterly numbers. Many of our parents and grandparents found themselves unemployable during what should have been the prime earning years of their career. So the promise of putting your time and the company will take care of you evaporated during our formative years and left a deep impression on our young minds. And you have to remember, millennials grew up wanting to change the world, do something good for the world. We were the first generation to grow up with no expectation of lifetime employment. Almost nobody grows up wanting to work in insurance, and millennials and Gen Zers are no exception to this rule. Less than 4% of millennials report an interest in working in insurance. Young people today are more likely to think that insurance is a scam, which of course it isn't, than thinking that insurance is a great career, which of course it is. Jason Ryan Dorsey's Center for Generational Kinetics has done research and found that millennials have a different definition of loyalty from prior generations. Basically, older generations, when asked to define loyalty at work, they define it as time. I came, I stayed, I got my gold watch. To the millennials, they define it as I worked really hard while I was there. A few of us were lucky enough to graduate college and join the insurance industry between 2005 and 2009, and we had the chance to get promoted to manager level before the crash of 2008. Those of us who didn't start in the industry until 2009 or later, we found a much less friendly place. We found cost cutting had become rampant, and entry-level jobs had largely become thankless call center roles, and there was no promise of lifetime employment anymore, or even of being rewarded for being loyal to the same employer. Right? So those of us, and many millennials who graduated 2009 to 2012, we found few jobs and even fewer jobs that actually require our expensive college degrees, all while carrying an average of several $1,000s of student loans. At most large carriers, anything more than a 2% raise is rare unless you're changing jobs or getting promoted, regardless of performance. For a lot of our early time in the workforce, promotions were very hard to come by because those ahead of us were not getting promoted. Boomers weren't retiring, extras weren't getting promoted, we weren't getting promoted. The economy has improved in the last few years, and people are finally retiring and opening up those promotions. And all of a sudden, millennials with a few years of insurance experience can easily be 20 to 40% more valuable in the market than what they're getting paid at their current employer. It is so easy to find them now. It's so easy to even if they're happy at your company, it's so easy for recruiting companies to locate them on LinkedIn. If you have 2, 3, 4, 5 years of insurance experience and you haven't changed companies, there's a very good chance that you're currently underpaid, and it's very easy for recruiters to see that and to give you a call even if you're not actively looking, right? And even if you're happy where you're at, if you get calls every week about other positions, someday a recruiter's going to catch you in a day when you're not having a good day. So basically, the talent wars have heated up, and the taboo on frequent job changes has largely disappeared. The pension plans that were retention devices for boomers and even Gen Xers are generally much less generous or non-existent by the time we were hired. The 401k plans that replace those don't serve the same retention since they're much more portable. So yeah, when a millennial changes jobs, they might lose part of their 401k, but you could easily make that up if you're getting a 30 or 40% raise, which is not unusual. So basically, millennials have realized that loyal employees end up making 50% less than frequent job hoppers, and giant student loans breathing down their necks. They simply can't afford not to move around, even if they're fairly happy. So anyway, the end result has been a perfect storm where those that change companies a lot more often than previous generations in our industry did end up ahead. And really, ultimately, what I want to leave you with, once you think about all the different incentives that are playing in the minds of your younger employees, think about it this way. Would you have stayed? Would you have had enough loyalty to stay at the same company the moment you figured out that you were making 20 to 40% less than your value in the market, with no promise of lifetime employment, a pension, or even predictable career growth? Would you? Would you have done it with the understanding that a bad quarter might lead your CEO to put the stock price over your livelihood and downsize thousands in a single day? Would you? Oh, that's what I want to leave you with. TC, out.